and it just really energised me. And I had so much buzzing around in my head last night. And I did say that I love poetry, but I love the storytelling of poetry. And although I love reading poetry, I love writing poetry. And I had written some, and then I've had big gaps. But last night I had so much buzzing around in my head that I had to put it on paper, and it is only in draft at the moment. But it is, I've called it The Invisible Army. And I will read that out to you later, what I've done. But the one one of them, it came about because year before last, where I'm involved with rare dementia support, which is relating to my husband's condition, I somehow ended up talking to professionals up in North Wales about rare dementias, along with other people. So I was talking to professionals. And when I sort of told my story in poetry, well, I said it as almost a poem, and I thought, I've got to write it down because otherwise I forget the bits that I want to say. And that started a journey of writing poems relating to being a carer, the condition, and that's how I've ended up with last night and this morning scribbling words down for this very short poem. So it's a way of me being creative in a very stressed situation, I suppose. And I take a book everywhere to write down, jot down notes and things. And sometimes the poems come out and sometimes it's just a gobbledygook of words. But it's everyone's different in how they deal with things, and that's my way. I have to be creative in one way or another, and I'm a bit dipping in and out of different things of being creative. So being so far at the bottom and give them aspirations, little aspirations. We don't need big ones. We just need to have something to aim for, to look for, and even as carers, we need to have that thing that gives us that boost to get there. And even, you know, the food banks are struggling more. You know, I read about it all over the country. There's problems. Community fridges. It's, I don't know where to start with what we do to help carers to improve their lives. I really don't know what we do for that. I had a thought, and the problem was the thought. It gets political because we could help people to manage better if that's the problem. And I'm not judging anyone. We all have ways that we could manage better. But then do we let social services and the government off the hook if everybody learns to manage so well that it becomes part of that poem that I wrote about us being invisible? Seeing people less, and it is isolating as a carer. For me, it's physically isolating, and because I'm a long way from family. But it's also physically isolating because if you need paid carers to come in, we're such a sparse county, you can't get people. There is just, it's the whole workforce here. Young people want to go away, they'll go away to uni, they'll go away to college, and they don't come back. But that's the state anywhere. When my kids went to uni, from where we lived in Kent, one went to Buckinghamshire, the other one went to Bristol. They've never gone back. They've now moved further. The youngest one is in Usk, the oldest one's Northamptonshire, and my family is spread all across the country, the whole, you know, extended family. So it's not just here, it's everywhere. But it's just very noticeable in rural areas, the difficulty of finding carers. And the isolating, friends and family, they're frightened they're going to catch dementia. Most people are frightened they're going to catch dementia. Most people don't catch it. Most people are just predisposed to it, and there's a few younger people who will unfortunately get familial Alzheimer's, which is really sad because they get it at a very young age. They can get it in their 30s. But most people with rare dementias, which is my big problem in this county, there's not many of them. They get it before the age of 65. So, you know, it starts very young, relatively young. You know, when you think, you know, I don't know, 50 is the new 30 and 60 is the new whatever. Just is that it's difficult. Makes it difficult. I'm just going to breathe. The suggestion of support evolving, totally, I wish it did. Big wish is that social, I don't want to pick on particulars, social services, health, people, society, see a preventative life rather than dealing with crisis. Dealing with crises are so draining for everybody. It doesn't help anyone. People panic. If we could only become a preventative society, it'd be amazing. That's partly what I've done as a carer. Because of my background, I have, and it's made life easier for me. I have put things in place before before they're needed. So situations that have occurred, I've put equipment in place. I've tried to sort things out before they're needed. And I try to talk to other people who are potential carers about talk to people, because so many people don't recognise themselves as a carer. You know, just having someone to listen to you, as we were talking about yesterday, just having a listening ear is really important. When I go to meetings and I'm the sole carer there, and they're all professionals, I've become very loud. I've become very much that if there's a group thing going on, I'll be the first one saying something because I want to get our voice in there. And I try really hard not to make it my experience. I try to make it a broad, this is a carer's experience rather than it's just my experience. Because I think it's really important that if we are able to share our stories as carers, it needs to evolve, just like all those other things. It's an evolving, you know, my life 10 years ago as a carer is completely different to my life now as a carer. It's moved on. There are changes. And it's a learning curve for all of us as carers. But yeah, and so going back to the cost of living, and because it's affected everyone, it doesn't matter if you work or don't work, if you're a carer or whatever you are, it's affected people. And I think it's made everyone pull the drawbridge up, bring their shell around them. And I can only speak for myself as a carer in that what my needs are completely different to the carer down the road. You know, we're all so individual, and I think it's very difficult nowadays for people to see that individuality and what we can bring, because every one of us is different. And it would be amazing if we could hone in those skills that people are bringing and really listen to what's out there. It would save everybody masses, because all those carers, as I said, they make up an invisible army, but they've all come with life experience. It would be so good to help the child carers, because there are children coming up who are carers who we've got that, I hope, as carers, we've got that empathy, that we can. It's just a vast thing. Very, very big. I was at a meeting, and the joke is that I usually get asked to be chair because it keeps me shut up. I can only do the chairing bit then. Stops me talking like this. I was chairing it, and people were giving their stories, and someone opposite who was on the professional side said, and there was a young carer who'd given a story. And when I say a story, narrative, people's story, it's very difficult because when people give their story, other people think it's fiction, and it's not. It's a narrative. It's our life. And it's getting that over to professionals as well as what we mean by our story. And at the end of it, this young carer had given her story, and one of the professionals on the other side said, well, that's what we need. She could then go on and become a paid carer. I could have gone, if I hadn't been chair, I'd have gone across the room and strangled him, I'm sure I would. Because it was like, you've missed the point completely. That person, it was a girl, needs to be got to uni or somewhere, or got into a trade, or got somewhere where she can use her experiences. And I thought, there's days like that, I think, whose head shall I knock together? Because I might get a bit of sense. I'm like an octopus at the moment. I've got tentacles everywhere. But it's not, even if I can make a grain of salt difference, then it will move on, because that grain of salt will build into a pile of salt and we'll get somewhere. But it's encouraging other people to do it as well. I think it was because we were talking yesterday, and you were asking all the right questions, and it just sets something, and they come along accidentally. But I need to sort of do it a bit better. It started when I was at primary school. And I can't remember the poem, but I wrote a poem about a swan because it was up on the wall, and I remember that bit. And then from then on, I've just always been interested in reading and literature and poetry. And poetry that when I was doing my exams years ago, we did First World War poetry, and I still love Wilfred Owen, Secret Sassoon poetry, because there's so much meaning, it's all the whole anti-war thing, but it is so meaningful. And it's just gone through, and I've tried, and I've written. I did start when I finished working. I started a humanities degree because I just need to keep my brain going, and it was art and humanities, so a lot of that was around literature and art, which was amazing because I got both of them in one go. But I journal, I diary. Sometimes there's big gaps because now I can't sort of sit and do it the way I would have done because it's the time element. But I try and have a diary where I just do the little wins every day. So if there's something, it could be something really small, but I put down that little win that we've had that day. It could be really, it could be anything. But it's really important to remember the little wins and reflective. I think part of my training as an OT is you do a lot of reflective practice. So you have to keep reflective diaries, and you write what's happened in that day, leave a blank page, and then go back to it a week later, and would you still write the same thing, that sort of thing. So it's sort of in me to do it, but it's come from being a child. Going to the library at the age of about 4 and always having a library card. Yeah, it's one of those big things. I'm sure Freddie are doing. I think because I'm not so involved with the young carers, I know on the periphery what's going on with them. But it is, it's a big issue with that. So it's just one of those really horrendous things. And I think it's because it's trying to bring all those individual needs and not make us tick boxes. You've ticked that box and it doesn't quite fit. As I said, I'm being a square peg. I don't fit into all their tick boxes, and I think that's why social services abandoned me, because they haven't a clue what to do. We need to look at individuals and look at not needs. I'm fed up with the word needs. It's not what they need, it's what they want and what's important to people. And that's because of my background, that's what I look at. What's important to you? And is it important that you do it tomorrow? Could it wait till next week? Can we get someone to help you to do that? Would it cost, you know, we get the cost again, but it's about, if only we could get all those carers together properly. Totally. Oh my goodness, it's so lovely to talk to someone in that sort of way, because it sort of made me think, and I can really, what you said about not thinking of yourself as a carer. My daughter's an OT, a paediatric OT down in Gwent. And years ago I said, there's these, I said, you know, there was something that I wanted to share with her mums. And she said, but they don't see themselves as carers, they're mums. And I went, oh, okay, okay. So I totally get where you're coming from, because the systems depend on us because we are married to someone or we have children that have got problems. And because we love them unconditionally, they really do go on our unconditional love and our guilt. As I said in my poem, they go on all these, well, part of that I dipped into, but they depend on us caring and loving for those partners of ours or children. And the only time that the system has to consider it is when it's a parent, because, sorry, if you're looking after a parent, an older person, a parent, not a child carer, but looking after them, because we've got these people that are stuck in the middle. They're looking after grandchildren and they're looking after parents. And it feels as though they're the ones that social service are more listening to, because those older people really do they're on their own usually, and they need more help. So they may be the people to listen to. Talk about educating the population, educating staff in hospitals. That, you know, there's a whole different thing we could talk about with that. That's for another time, because that's a huge issue that needs to be resolved and would help. The bed blocking is crazy. And absolutely, if I've got a minute, the example I'll give, 2 years ago, my husband had a very minor stroke, but heart attack. Sorry, he's never had a stroke, heart attack. We eventually, after hours and hours, he ended up in Hereford, but it's all ambulatory care. This was coming up for 2 years ago, sitting in chairs. Anyway, they did keep him in for a week. They did find a bed for him because he's got other medical problems. He came home, and a week after that, he thought he was having another heart attack. So I phoned up, and the irony is so funny. I mean, I just have to laugh about everything, because if you didn't, you'd cry. But I mean, I do end up laughing about most of the situations we're in. I phoned up 111, and I said, you know, I'd given him, I'd do the usual, because I've been there before. I'd give him the aspirin to break down anything in case. It's first line of defence. If there's a heart attack, you do the aspirin. With the aspirin, and I said to her, you know, we think he might be having another one. And she looked through the notes and she said, I'll patch you straight through to the ambulance control. There was no point going to anything else. And it was hilarious, because I'm like, okay, so I spoke to ambulance control. They didn't bother to go through doctors, paramedics, or anyone. It's just like, we'll go straight to ambulance control. So I spoke to her and she said, be quicker if you just bring him in. So I did. I just drove him there, and he said it was much more comfortable than the ambulance the time before. And then it was decided he wasn't having an extension of the heart attack. And because of his dementia, he gets very agitated. So we're there, and it was absolutely heaving. So the nurse said, anyone that's not a patient has got to go. And I said, I can't leave him. And he's saying, I'll self-discharge. He's saying, she didn't care. And it was like, so there was another nurse who said, look, just stay. He said, I'll deal with her. You just stay. So I did. And then later on, 12 hours later, I was absolutely shattered. And they still were keeping him in. So I drove home from Hereford.